The phone rings at 6:14 p.m. A 911 dispatcher picks up in Sarasota County, Florida. There is no clear voice on the line, just a woman whispering, crying, speaking carefully as if someone is listening. "I'm sorry. I just want to see my family." A pause. Then again, quieter this time, more desperate. "I just want to see my family again. Please, let me go." Then a male voice cuts across the line, low, threatening, furious. He tells her to get off the phone. The call stays connected for 6 minutes. During those 6 minutes, Denise Amber Lee tells the dispatcher her name. She says she is married to a beautiful husband. She says she just wants to see her kids again. She begs. She pleads. She does everything right. And the system fails her completely. What you are about to hear is one of the most documented cases of catastrophic 911 failure in American history. A crime that changed how emergency calls are handled across the entire United States. It is the story of how a 21-year-old mother fought with everything she had to stay alive, how a killer named Michael Lee King thought he had won, and how 18 years later, on March 17, 2026, the state of Florida closed that chapter permanently. This is the story of Michael Lee King and the woman whose voice refused to be silenced. If you have been watching this channel and haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. This story will stay with you. January 17th, 2008 begins as an ordinary Thursday in Northport, Florida. Denise Amber Lee is 21 years old. She is a stay-at-home mother. Her husband Nathan works 3 jobs so she can raise their 2 sons, Noah, who is 2 years old, and Adam, who is 6 months old. By every account in court records and family interviews, Denise is a devoted, joyful mother. The kind of person described by those who knew her as someone who put her children above everything else. That morning, she and Nathan talk on the phone at 11:21 a.m. It is the last time they will ever speak. According to court documents, the couple discusses something ordinary, the nice weather, whether to open the windows. Small, domestic, unremarkable. The kind of conversation that only becomes heartbreaking in hindsight. Nathan arrives home from work around 3:30 p.m. The windows are closed. His wife is gone. Their 2 children, a toddler and an infant, are together in the same crib. Alone. Nathan does not know how long they have been there. He calls Denise's phone. No answer. He searches the house. Nothing. At 3:30 p.m., Nathan Lee dials 911 and reports his wife missing. That call triggers one of the largest search operations Sarasota County had seen in years. According to documented reports, over 300 law enforcement officers would eventually be deployed, police units, helicopters, K-9 teams, all hunting for a young mother who had simply vanished from her own backyard. What Nathan does not yet know is that a neighbor had already seen something suspicious. A woman living nearby later testified in court that she watched a dark green Chevrolet Camaro circle the block 3 to 4 times between 1 and 2 p.m. before pulling into the Lee family driveway. She was certain of the time. She had been watching her favorite daytime television program. She noted the car was unusual. She did not call 911. The driver of that green Camaro was a 36-year-old unemployed plumber named Michael Lee King. He lived in the same neighborhood. He was not a friend of the family. He was not known to Denise. According to everything established at trial, he had driven through the neighborhood that afternoon deliberately looking for a victim. He spotted Denise on her back porch, trimming her 2-year-old son Noah's hair. Court records and trial testimony establish what happened next. King gained entry and took control of Denise. Investigators determined she kept her children safe inside, what the Denise Amber Lee Foundation later described as an act of deliberate protection in the middle of unimaginable terror. She made sure her boys would not be harmed. Then Michael King drove away with her in his green Camaro. What followed over the next several hours was a race between information and time, a race that Denise Amber Lee would do everything in her power to win. King drove her first to his home, where, according to court documents and the subsequent criminal conviction, he sexually assaulted her. He then placed her, bound, in the back seat of his Camaro and drove. He stopped at his cousin Harold Muxlow's house sometime between 5:30 and 6 p.m. Court testimony from Muxlow himself revealed that King knocked on the door and asked to borrow 3 specific items: a flashlight, a gas can, and a shovel. Muxlow later testified that from inside the car, a girl's voice called out to him and asked him to call the police. King told him not to worry about it. He said it was nothing. Muxlow handed over the items. King got back in the car and drove away. This detail, the flashlight, the gas can, the shovel, became one of the most damning elements of the prosecution's case. It showed premeditation. It showed intent. It showed exactly what Michael Lee King had already planned for Denise Amber Lee. At this point, for separate 911 calls had already been made. Nathan's report of a missing wife. A call for Denise's own father, Rick Goff, a sergeant with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, who immediately activated every available resource he had access to. And the search was massive. It was urgent. It was professional. But nobody yet knew where that green Camaro was going. At exactly 6:14 p.m., the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office receives an unusual 911 call. The number is traced almost immediately to a cell phone registered to Michael Lee King. The dispatcher picks up and hears a woman's voice, not speaking to them directly, but speaking carefully, haltingly, as though someone else in the vehicle is monitoring every word. Court records contain the transcript of this call. It was played for the jury at trial. Anyone who has heard it describes it as one of the most harrowing recordings to emerge from any criminal case in Florida. I'm sorry. I just want to see my family. She repeats it. She's trying to communicate without escalating the situation. She's trying to give the dispatcher enough information while keeping King calm. She tells the dispatcher her name is Denise. She says she is married to a beautiful husband and just wants to see her kids again. She asks to be taken home. She pleads with King directly, audible on the recording, to let her go. A male voice, later identified in court by Muxlow as Michael King, interrupts the call with an obscenity and tells her to get off the phone. She keeps going. Please let me go. Please let me go. Please let me see my family again. The call lasts 6 minutes. During those 6 minutes, the dispatcher repeatedly asks her for her location. Denise does not know exactly where she is. She has been driven across multiple counties, bound in the back seat of a car. She cannot give street address. She gives her name. She confirms she is with her abductor. She makes it as clear as she possibly can that she is in danger. Then the call disconnects. The dispatcher now has the cell phone number. They have the name. They have enough to close the loop, to connect this call directly to Nathan Lee's earlier missing persons report, to connect the number to Michael King's registered address. The information is there. The dots are there to be connected. But the connection does not happen fast enough. 16 minutes after Denise's call ends, a woman named Jane Kowalski is driving on US 41 and dials 911. She has just pulled up beside a green Camaro at a traffic light. Inside, she can see someone she initially thinks it is a child, screaming and banging against the back window. She hears the screaming. She watches a hand slam against the glass. She makes eye contact with the driver briefly before the light changes. Kowalski does not let the car go. She follows. She stays on the line. She gives the dispatcher real-time location updates. She describes the car. She describes what she is seeing. She is, by every documented account, doing everything right. But her call is routed to Charlotte County's 911 center, a neighboring dispatch jurisdiction, because the call originates just across the county line. Charlotte County Dispatch receives the information. And here, according to the internal investigation that followed, is where the system catastrophically breaks down. The critical location information Kowalski is providing, real-time, precise, actionable, is not immediately entered into the computer system and dispatched to police units already searching for Denise Lee. It is written down by a dispatcher during a shift change. It does not reach the officers in the field in time. 2 dispatchers were later disciplined following the internal investigation. Multiple training failures were identified, but the investigation also concluded that it could not be definitively stated whether a faster response would have saved Denise's life. That sentence, careful, legal, technically accurate, is the one that has haunted the Lee family ever since. What is documented is this. At the exact moment Jane Kowalski is following the green Camaro and giving police its location in real time, King is completing his drive to a remote area near Plantation Boulevard in Northport. He stops the car. He takes Denise to a location away from the road. At 9:15 p.m., King is arrested. Police stop his green Camaro. He has no Denise. He gives investigators nothing. He denies everything. He refuses to reveal where she is. The search continues through the night. For 2 days, Rick Goff, a Charlotte County Sheriff's detective, a man who has spent his career solving crimes, searches for his own daughter. For 2 days, Nathan Lee waits. On the morning of January 19, 2008, a member of the search team finds disturbed earth near Plantation Boulevard in Northport. At a depth of 3 feet and 1 inch, they find Denise Amber Lee. She is lying on her side, in the fetal position. The medical examiner determines she was killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. She was found less than 3 miles from where Jane Kowalski made her final 911 call. She was 21 years old. Michael Lee King goes to trial on August 24, 2009. He is 38 years old. He has maintained his innocence. His defense team presents no witnesses. Their strategy is focused on reasonable doubt, specifically the fact that the murder weapon, the 9mm handgun, was never physically recovered. The prosecution does not need the gun. What they have is overwhelming. Hair matching Denise Lee's DNA is found on duct tape recovered from King's home. Her ring is found in his Camaro. Her personal belongings are recovered from his house and vehicle. Forensic evidence places her at his home. Court records confirm the medical examiner's finding that the entrance wound to her head was 1 centimeter wide, consistent with a 9mm round. And before the trial, investigators established that King had been at a shooting range earlier on January 17th, firing a 9mm handgun that was stored under the passenger seat of his Camaro. Then prosecutors play the 911 tape. According to CNN's trial reporting, as the 6-minute recording is played for the jury, Denise's voice fills the courtroom. The jury hears her pleading with King. They hear her begging the dispatcher for help. They hear King's voice cutting across the line, threatening and dismissive. They hear her trying again. They hear her refuse to give up. The jury deliberates for 2 hours and 5 minutes. On August 28, 2009, they return with a unanimous verdict, guilty of first-degree murder, sexual battery, and kidnapping. King shows no reaction. On September 4, 2009, the jury recommends the death penalty in a 12-0 vote. Unanimous on every count, including the ultimate sentence. The judge later formally imposes the death sentence. King's legal team files appeals. They will continue filing them for the next 16 years. Meanwhile, something else is happening in Florida that is directly connected to what Denise did on January 17, 2008. Her father, Rick Goff, and her husband, Nathan, go to Tallahassee. They testify. They push. They refuse to let the 911 failures be buried in an internal report and forgotten. In April 2008, just months after Denise's murder, the Florida legislature passes Senate Bill CS/SB 1694. It passes unanimously. It is called the Denise Amber Lee Act. It establishes new standards for 911 operator training across the state of Florida. Nathan Lee founds the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, which begins working with 911 centers across the country. Denise's sister Amanda becomes a 911 dispatcher herself, an advocate from inside the system. By documented account, the city of Northport's 911 center, one of the centers involved in the failures of January 17th, upgrades its training program to 6 months of intensive preparation. The technology improves. Cell phone GPS locating becomes standard. Text to 911 is implemented. The Denise Amber Lee Foundation does not stay in Florida. Nathan Lee travels across the country, sharing her story with emergency response professionals. His goal, stated publicly and consistently across years of advocacy, is simple. What happened to Denise must never happen to anyone else. As of March 2026, the foundation continues its work. Rick Goff, her father, the detective who spent 2 days searching for his own daughter, reflects publicly after the 2026 execution with words that court reporters document. He says Denise put King where he ended up because she outsmarted him. He says she did everything in her power to save her life. He is right. She called 911 from her abductor's phone while he was driving. She gave her name. She confirmed she was in danger. She spoke to a dispatcher without letting King know exactly how much information she was transmitting. Court records and investigative reporting confirm that the information she provided, her name, the phone number which traced directly to King, gave police the key evidence they needed to identify and arrest him within hours. Without that call, Michael King might not have been arrested at 9:15 p.m. on January 17th. Without that call, the case against him would have been harder to build. Without Denise Amber Lee's extraordinary composure under conditions no person should ever face, a killer might have walked. She did not let that happen. Before we go deeper into the death row years and the execution itself, drop a comment below. Have you ever had a 911 call go wrong? Or do you know someone who has? This story changed the entire emergency response system in the United States. We want to know if it has touched your community. Subscribe if you haven't already. What comes next in this case is something most people have never heard. Michael Lee King spent 17 years on Florida's death row. As of early 2026, Florida holds nearly 250 inmates on death row, according to State Department of Corrections data. King is one of them. Housed at Union Correctional Institution and later at Florida State Prison near Stark, in a system that advocacy organizations describe as one of the most active in terms of executions in the country. During those years, King's legal team pursues every available avenue. Multiple appeals are filed. They challenge the death penalty protocols. They raise questions about the reliability of the lethal injection process. In the final weeks before the scheduled execution, his attorneys argue that the Florida Department of Corrections mismanaged the state's death penalty protocols and that King was denied due process because he was not given access to certain records about the drugs to be used in his execution. His attorneys specifically raised the issue of drug transparency. According to advocacy organization Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, King's legal team argued that heavily redacted drug logs indicated the state had used expired drugs in inadequate doses in prior executions. The state, according to the organization's statement, did not dispute those specific claims, but repeatedly asserted that it was presumed to follow its own protocol. On March 10, 2026, the Florida Supreme Court denies King's motion for a stay and an evidentiary hearing. On March 16th, the United States Supreme Court rejects his final applications without comment. There are no more legal avenues. Meanwhile, the man who spent those years on death row had changed, or had appeared to change, in ways that his advocates documented and his opponents largely dismissed as irrelevant given the nature of his crimes. According to publicly documented statements from those who knew him in prison, King had maintained a consistent behavioral record during his incarceration. He worked performing plumbing and maintenance tasks inside the facility. He developed a serious Catholic religious faith. His spiritual advisor visited him weekly. He studied scripture and participated in prison ministry programs. For those advocating against his execution, these details mattered. For Denise Amber Lee's family, they were beside the point. Nathan Lee's position on this was documented publicly before and after the execution. He stated that the chapter needed to close. He credited prosecutors, law enforcement, and everyone involved across 18 years of legal process for getting to this point. He noted that many things had to go perfectly for the day to arrive, and that they did. Rick Goff, Denise's father, made clear what he wanted the public to understand about his daughter. He said she outsmarted her attacker. He said she fought with everything she had. There is also documentation of another figure from the case making a brief public statement after the execution. Noah Lee, the 2-year-old boy who had been left alone in a crib with his infant brother on January 17, 2008, was now 20 years old. He spoke briefly to reporters after the execution. According to documented reporting, he acknowledged that he never got the opportunity to know his mother or be raised by her. He said it had been a long time coming. He said he was glad to have a closure. He was 2 years old the day his mother called 911 from the back of a green Camaro and begged to come home to her children. He was 20 when justice, in the state of Florida's legal definition of the word, was carried out. Governor Ron DeSantis signed King's death warrant on February 13, 2026. The execution was scheduled for March 17, 2026. It was the fourth execution Florida carried out that year, following a record-setting 19 executions in 2025, more than any other state in the country, accounting for approximately 40% of all U.S. executions that year, according to reported state data. Florida law permits death sentences on an 8-4 jury recommendation, one of the lowest bars for capital punishment in the United States. Florida also holds more death row exonerations than any other state in the country. These facts sit alongside each other in the official record. The state that executes the most is also the state that has freed the most innocent people from death row. Michael Lee King's case contained no serious exoneration claims. The evidence was overwhelming and the conviction was unanimous. But the broader context of Florida's record is part of the documented landscape of the case. On the evening of March 17, 2026, Michael Lee King is executed at Florida State Prison near Stark. He is 54 years old. He has spent 17 years and approximately 2 months on death row. At 6 p.m., the process begins. At 6:13 p.m., the Department of Corrections pronounces him dead following a 3-drug lethal injection. Florida officials state that the execution was carried out without incident. King had requested a final meal of pizza, ice cream, soda, and tater tots, according to documented reporting. His final statement, delivered in written form, according to Charlotte County officials present at the execution, referenced his religious conversion in prison. Nearly inaudible last words documented by reporters at the post-execution briefing referenced finding Jesus in prison and attempting to live as a disciple, following what he described as the 2 great commandments. He did not apologize. He did not ask for forgiveness. Rick Goff, Denise's father, who was present among the witnesses, confirmed that King delivered the written statement but did not say sorry. Goff's documented quote on this moment was direct. "If you cannot say something from your heart, do not say it." The family wore pink to the post-execution press conference. It was deliberate. Pink was Denise's favorite color. Nathan Lee, her husband, addressed reporters. He said the chapter was finally closed. He acknowledged the 18 years it had taken and the number of people whose work had made the day possible. He said everything had to go perfectly, and it did. Noah Lee, their son, 20 years old now, the child who was 2 when his mother vanished, thanked prosecutors and law enforcement. His documented words were brief and exact. He said it had been a long time coming. He said he was glad to have the closure. He said he unfortunately never got the opportunity to know her or be raised by her. That is the weight of this case, stated plainly by the person who carries it most directly. Denise Amber Lee was 21 years old when she was abducted. She was a daughter, a wife, a mother of 2 sons under the age of 3. She was the daughter of a law enforcement officer. She had been taught what to do in an emergency. She did all of it. She called 911. She identified herself. She gave the dispatcher her kidnapper's cell phone number without letting him realize what she was doing. She fought from the moment she was taken to the moment the recording ends. The system failed her. The law caught the man who killed her. And 18 years after 5 separate 911 calls went unanswered, uncoordinated, or unfollowed in time, 911 dispatchers across the United States now train using different standards, better protocols, and in many states, mandatory certification requirements that did not exist before January 17, 2008. That is Denise Amber Lee's legacy. Not just a foundation, not just a law, a measurable change in how this country responds when someone calls for help. The Denise Amber Lee Foundation, led by Nathan Lee, continues to work with emergency response agencies nationwide. Denise's sister Amanda became a 911 dispatcher and works from within the system. The City of Northport's Dispatch Center now provides 6 months of training to its operators, compared to the environment that existed on the day of the abduction. Michael Lee King died in a prison execution chamber at 6:13 p.m. on March 17, 2026. He was the 32nd person executed under Governor Ron DeSantis. Denise Amber Lee's name is a law. Her voice, that 6-minute recording from the back of a moving car, is played in 911 training centers across the country to show dispatchers what a call for help sounds like what courage sounds like, and what the cost of failure looks like. She made those 6 minutes count. She always will. If this story affected you, subscribe, like, comment, and share it. The Denise Amber Lee Foundation continues its work today. And if you want to understand more about how the American justice system handles the cases that define it, watch our next video, the story of the 911 failures that changed emergency response law across an entire country, and the families who refuse to let those failures be forgotten. It is already queued up for you. Do not miss it.